Beautiful. All right. You ready?
Let's do this.
Okay, let's do the intro and we'll kick it off.
All right, everyone is on. So we're ready to go. So good morning and welcome. Here is Regan.
Okay, guys. So welcome to your Health Transformation webinar. Today we're going to continue on some of the things that help, not only regulate blood sugar, but are going to help you live a long, healthy, happy life. Because the number one killer in the world right now, the number one thing that kills more people than anything else, you know what it is? It's this thing called aging. 100,000 people die every single day. It's a trick question. Nobody gets it. But 100,000 people die every day from aging. And so we say, well, maybe we could change this. Maybe we could help end aging. And that would be healthier, just really transform what's going on, is through this process called time-restricted eating. So we're going to talk about time-restricted eating today and really dive in deep on what this means. So really appreciate you guys tuning in. We've got some people live here with us as well. So time-restricted eating, you can see with the healthy clock, if you're following circadian rhythms, your body's going to sleep better, your brain's going to work better. Circadian rhythms, then what happens is you're going to end up with fatty liver disease, type 2 diabetes, your muscles start to deteriorate, your brain doesn't work as well, your heart doesn't work as well. So I'm going to dive into the science behind this, because this can be life-changing, and it's the simplest thing that you can do. Simplest place to start if you're looking at nutrition is thinking about when to eat and when not to eat. It's like so basic and so simple, but it will change your life. So let's talk about circadian rhythms first, because if you look at it, our bodies, our hormones follow circadian rhythms. So if you guys, the cortisol test, you've done the spit test, right? Many of you on the webinar have done that too. And the spit test is just simply a reflection of how your cortisol levels are doing. And cortisol and melatonin have this inverse relationship with each other. But one of the things we found is that your circadian rhythms, they regulate every single function in our body. So for example, hormones, our cortisol is higher in the morning. As the day goes on, cortisol should drop, and then cortisol stabilizes. And then melatonin comes up, and what does melatonin help us do? Go to sleep, right? But we live in this world where we have an issue with our technology, and technology just froze us. But we have this issue with our circadian rhythms, because we can eat any time of the day. We have light. We can just turn on lights. It's only the people who are very wealthy 1,000 years ago, and they could actually purchase wax to have candles. And so that was like a big thing. Or you purchase salt so you can preserve your food throughout winter. Now you just go and you're like, well, I'm broke, but I can afford McDonald's at midnight, right? It's crazy. So yeah, I don't know. Kate, can you hear us at all?
Yeah, everything's good on our end.
Okay, I just saw my screen's frozen, so all good.
No worries. And sometimes when you move the screen, it does kind of slow the streaming power. So that's pretty much it. But everything's great. Oh, now you're frozen.
Do that at 7 o'clock. If you do that at 7 o'clock, then by the time you get to 7 o'clock at night, that's where you have to stop. And that means like the last supplement that goes into your mouth, the last anything is going to trigger a metabolic process in your liver. So you want not just some people do intermittent fasting where they'll do like bulletproof coffee, you're just doing fats. But that still causes your liver to engage. So we want to make sure on time restricted eating, you're going to have this 8 to 12 hour eating window, and that's it. The rest of the time it's restricted, meaning you're not doing anything that would start a metabolic process.
But water.
What's that?
Plain water.
Yeah, water. You can put salt in your water too, and that's a great way. So we'll talk about why you get hungry, what to do about it. This is where water and keeping your body nice and hydrated makes time-restricted eating much more pleasant. And then we're going to talk about how to set up your day for success. So let's jump into this cool thing called your circadian rhythm. And this is one of the best ways to resensitize your insulin receptors. So let's start at 6 in the morning. 6 in the morning is when you have the sharpest rise in your blood pressure. So right around 6:45, your cortisol levels rise, your blood pressure rises, and you're ready to take on the day. By the time you get to 7:30, your melatonin secretion stops. 9 o'clock is the highest testosterone secretion. So good time for focus, and it's a really good time to set goals for the day and kind of get your overall agenda and purpose mapped out. High alertness right around 10 o'clock. So it's a good time to get your work done. It's between about 9 and 2:30. Good time to be productive in your day. By the time we get to noon, you're still high alert. Best coordination comes around 2:30 in the afternoon. So it's a great time. If Cade, we've got him on the webinar. If you're going to go snowboarding or mountain biking, I want to do it in the afternoon because Cade will take me down some gnarly stuff. So I don't want to wreck. He's my younger brother, but yeah, he's crazy on a mountain bike, especially fastest reaction time around 3:30. By the time we get to 5 o'clock at night, that's when we have our greatest cardiovascular efficiency and muscle strength. So best time, I know a lot of you are really worried about bodybuilding and you want to get that single rep max, so do it at 5, all right? If someone's going to bet money on it, do it at 5. By the time you get to 6:30, that's the highest blood pressure of the day. So it's a bad time to go and get your yearly physical because your doctor's going to say, oh, you've got hypertension. And now that the American Heart Association's actually lowered pre-hypertensive markers, they did that November 13th of last year. Now you're going to get a medication much quicker. Don't do it at night. Highest body temperature at 7 o'clock at night. And then by 9 o'clock, that's where melatonin secretion starts. By the time you go to bed, ideally you start winding down, all lights are off, no movies, no Facebook. Sorry guys, turn that off right around 9 o'clock because this is when your body needs to go into the sleep mode. If you have blue lights coming into your eyes, you have these receptors called melopsin. And melopsin is a neurotransmitter that triggers cortisol, which stops melatonin production. So a lot of my patients with insomnia, all I tell them is, I'm like, well, what are you doing at night before bed? Well, my husband and I watch TV. I'm like, well, why don't you make love and then go to sleep and turn off the TV, right? Get the TV and remove it from your room. And so it's a much better process. By 2 o'clock, you're in your deepest sleep. You're getting all the nice dreams, the deep REM sleep. By 4:30 in the morning, you have your lowest body temperature. So many of you have woken up at like 4:30, 5 in the morning and gotten an extra blanket. That's because your body temperature gets the lowest there. And then ideally you're waking up around 5:30 or 6. So an ideal sleep cycle is where you're winding down around 9 o'clock and it's not until about 5 or 6 that you're actually winding back up. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Most people, party time starts at like 11, or if you guys, I know you love clubbing, Rayon, and I'm just joking, but you see it in the clubs, like midnight's when all the 20-somethings want to go out, right? It's crazy. It's the worst pattern that you can put your brain through. So circadian rhythm, what it does is it dictates when you go to sleep, when we wake up. It's evolved from pressure and anticipation. So we needed to give our brains a break. That's what we've learned, is that you can't go without sleep. There's this Chinese kid that was trying to watch all the World Cup soccer games. Did you guys hear this?
I don't think so.
And he said, I'm going to watch every World Cup soccer game. And he was up for I think it was 14 days. He would just smoke cigarettes to keep the nicotine, to keep his brain going. And he died. You can't go, I can't remember the exact days that he went without sleep, but you can go longer without food than you can go without sleep. You guys know how long a human can go without food? 60 days, yeah. 60 days. I want you to try and let me know how it goes.
No, no, sir.
No, thanks. No, I don't recommend it. They've done these studies, and when people go without food for that 60-day time period, their livers were half the size when they got out of that. Their hearts were smaller. All their organs shrunk. Our bodies become very efficient. But when they got out of that experiment, like within a couple of weeks, they were right back to the same size. So very interesting. But yeah, your performance, because every organ has a biological clock, that means different times of the day do different things. Today's top diseases are chronic, and they're usually caused by an unhealthy circadian clock. So how many of you like following a very restricted diet, right? I think we all kind of follow some dietary restrictions.
Like following it or do follow it?
Yeah, you do follow it, but do you like it? So if you want a little bit of cushion, once you get rid of all the things that we may diagnose in your stool test, once you get rid of that, then the best way that you can have a little leeway in your diet is through time-restricted eating, through fasting. And what I found is then I can tolerate gluten much better if I eat gluten, a couple times a month or do some dairy. It doesn't flare me up and give me brain fog like it did before I was doing time-restricted eating. So I'm giving you something to look forward to. In Chinese medicine, we've always looked at the circadian clock, and they've isolated and dialed this in over 2,000 years ago is when this was documented. So different times of the day, you have different systems that are active. And now we have science that actually backs that up. I mean, we have this, and now we have this. So it's really interesting because 6 in the morning, that's a great time to have a bowel movement, right? 7 to 9, that's when our stomach, we get hungry and it's time to eat. We go 9 to 11, that's when our spleen starts taking the energy from the food and creating focus. The spleen cultivates your thoughts. 11 to 1, that's when your heart, so you have high energy. Remember, we talked about focus. This is when your dopamine levels are the highest in your brain. 1 to 3, that's when the small intestine really is getting a lot of nutrients into the muscles so that you have better coordination. 4 to 5 or 3 to 5, this is when your energy is restored. This is the best time to lift weights, right around this 5, it's kidney and bladder time. It's when you store nutrients, you build bone marrow, supper time. 7 to 9, this is a great time to read, for sex, for self-love, for protection. 9 to 11, this is when you get into more of this endocrine and metabolic balancing. This is when it's a good time to go to sleep. Remember, this is when you have the melatonin that starts getting secreted.
What's meant by triple burner?
So triple burner, this is the system in Chinese medicine that moves the fluid in your body. So it's a way of creating nice hydration and electrical energy in your body. The gallbladder, between 11 and 1, you want to have all your nutrients in your body. You're starting to get digested. Gallbladder releases bile. You drop into sleep. Your cells start getting all the energy that they need. And you guys know your brain is more active when we're asleep than when we're awake. So our brains are requiring about 25% of the energy. Liver time is when you have deep sleep. Your blood starts to detox. You're resting, you're recovering. Your brain is planning for the next day. It's organizing all the data from the day before. 3 to 5, this is when you fall into your deepest sleep. And this is, we now have science to validate this. Crimson memory, you're detoxing your lungs at this time. And then you do it all over again. You wake up, good time to meditate, have a bowel movement, all those things. So pretty interesting, right? Mm-hmm. So if you look at it, there's this thing called our genes, our gene expression, our genetic expression. And if you're following a circadian rhythm, certain genes are going to be turned on and other genes are going to be turned off. So it's your circadian rhythm that actually allows the healthy genes in your body to be expressed. Have you guys ever done like night shifts? Mariana, you did as a nurse, right? You've done some. Did you guys notice that it affected your health or brain function, or how did you feel when you're doing these night shifts?
Didn't last long. I didn't like it.
You didn't like it. What didn't you like about it?
I was trying to sleep during the day. My brain was awake. period.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It was weird.
It couldn't shut down. What did you notice when you did it?
A lot of fatigue.
Okay. Yeah. And so I think it's pretty interesting because if you look at, premature death and premature aging, it shows up a lot more. Diabetes, obesity, it shows up a lot more in shift workers. So some people, there's no choice, but really, if you look at it, a lot of this is because our genes, at least 25% of the major genes in your body, they're on a clock. So bad diet can affect these clocks. Restricted feeding can reset these. So time-restricted eating can actually reset your internal clock. So light can do this. So here's Malopsin. I'm going to show you blue light blocking glasses. So one of the best things you can do today, if you want to get back into the circadian rhythms, is you can use blue light blocking glasses. Do you guys know about these? They're about $10 on Amazon. And they're very simple. You just put blue light blocking glasses on. My kids wear them to school. And one of my boys, the teacher was giving him a hard time. And she's like, these aren't prescription glasses. Why are you wearing them? Because they have kind of an orange tint that she thought he was just trying to be cool and be a trendsetter. And he's like, no, my dad has me wear these glasses because they're underneath fluorescent lights all day.
Yeah, they are.
And, they're boys. They want to be active. My daughter, same way. And so when they're sitting in a classroom with these toxic lights coming in at them all the time, I said, well, let's try. And now they're doing all their work on a computer. We used to do our work by hand, and so what I did is put on the blue light blocking glasses, and all of a sudden they feel better about school. They're happier. They're more engaged. So little things can go a long ways, but this can help you, especially those of you who work on a computer all the time.
My husband insists on watching a movie when we go to bed,
Okay.
and I know it interferes.
Oh,
with my
yeah. So put on the blue light blocking glasses. When I go to a movie, I'll put my contacts in, put on blue light blocking glasses, and it's a much better experience. It doesn't change the color, it just changes the way that the melopsin receptors in your brain are either stimulated or not stimulated. All right, here's where we get our digital trauma from. Not digit as in fingers, but digital as in blue lights. TV, 76%, smartphones, 69.4%, laptops, 57%, desktops, 52%, tablets or e-readers, 42.5%, and then video games, 16.7%. So these blue light blocking glasses, if you're using any of these devices, and if you look at these statistics, 61% of adults experience digital eye strain due to prolonged use of electronic devices, 30% of adults spend most of their waking hours on devices. A quarter of kids spend more than 3 hours a day on a digital device. So blue light blocking glasses can be one of those things that helps. Okay, so let's talk about some of the studies. So time-restricted eating. So I'm going to jump into the studies and kind of give you guys a little motivation about how you can reset your circadian rhythms by watching the way that you eat. Because I can tell you the hardest time when you're first starting time-restricted eating, the hardest time of day for me was between about 7 and 8:30 at night. And the researchers, when they looked at this, they said, a lot of us, we actually consume more calories between, like, we eat dinner and then it's the calories after dinner, the dessert, and then the snacking. We consume more calories than we did at dinner itself. And so what they did is they took these mice and they said, if we fed, they took them from the same genetic lines, and they said, if we fed these mice, one group of mice, they're going to get the same exact diet, but if we fed one group of mice 8-hour access to food only, what would happen? And then we gave the other group of mice 24 hours access to food, same calories, same food. And so what they found after 4.5 months is that these mice that were on the high fat, not necessarily a healthy diet, they only had 8 hours a day to eat it. These mice weighed 34 grams after 4.5 months. That's 28% less than a 24-hour mice. The high fat diet, 24 hours a day, these mice weighed 47 grams after 4.5 to 4.5 months, 38% more than the 8-hour mice. So what you look at, the mouse eating 24 hours per day had 4 times the body fat than the mice that were only eating 8 hours a day. And they found that the mice that eat 8 hours a day actually condensed it to about 4 hours a day. They just got to the point where they just eat and they were much more active. The mice that were eating 24 hours a day, they were just grazing. They would go and eat a little bit, and then they'd go kind of mess around, and then they'd sleep, and then they eat a little bit, mess around, and sleep. So humans, it's even more important because we have a small digestive system and a big brain. We had to sacrifice some of our digestive system length so that we could actually grow our brains. So here's another study. What they did is they took obese mice and they said, what would happen if we gave this obese mice a high fat, high carb, kind of not ideal diets, and we let them eat 24 hours a day. And then we're going to take these same obese mice from the same genetic lineage, and we're going to put them on time restricted. What will happen? What they found is the obese mice became morbidly obese. They got worse, eating the same amount of calories. The obese mice that were put on time restriction, they became obese but fit mice. They actually lost weight but became more fit in the process. Then they took lean mice and they said, okay, if we did high fat, high sugar, 24 hours a day, these lean mice would have access to the food. These lean mice then became obese. And then what they did is they took the lean mice, same calories, but put them on time restriction. The lean mice became fit. So you guys know who Hugh Jackman is, Wolverine, shredded dude. Like he eats, it is 10 to 6. He doesn't put food in his mouth. Nothing goes in his mouth besides water. Nothing goes in before 10 in the morning, and then nothing after 6 at night. He's been very religious about that. You can see he's very fit, very shredded. So then they did another study where they said, okay, well, do you really have to do this time-restricted eating 7 days out of the week? So here's some good news for those of you who are like, man, what about the weekends? Or I got this party coming up and it's going to be really hard for me to go until 2 o'clock in the afternoon before I can eat. Well, here's where they took lean mice and they put them on time-restricted eating just on the weekdays. Monday through Friday, they said, all right, you're going to be on time restriction. But on the weekend, you can eat whenever you want. And what happened to these lean mice, they actually became lean and fit mice. So they still had the benefits of time-restricted eating. So it's something that you can play around with. Some of the diseases that have been reversed, things like obesity, glucose intolerance, gut dysbiosis. So if you have issues in your gut, digestive issues, one of the quickest ways to reverse those is the circadian rhythm. Cardiovascular disease, chronic inflammation, liver disease, increased cancer risk, hypercholesterolemia, sleep disorders, compromised muscle function. So if you want to get better muscle strength, then go on time-restricted eating. One of the things we found that you can do to really boost up your endurance and muscle strength is not just do that 12-hour window, but condense it to about 8 to 9 hours. You'll actually increase your muscle strength and you'll increase your muscle endurance. So you'll find there's an increase in brown fat. So brown fat tissue is the fat that actually you can use as an energy source. It becomes fat because the mitochondria in the cell, which is the powerhouse of the cell, those mitochondria migrate to the surface of the cell. They become more active. All right, so that's time-restricted eating. So any questions that anyone's got on that? All right, so here's your challenge. And you guys are already doing it, but for those of you who aren't, just figure out, okay, what's going to be the time of day that I eat? And just stick to it. But tell everybody around you. So my kids know. They're like, oh yeah, you're doing your time-restricted eating because they'll want to have a snack at night or something. I'm like, nope. So just tell everyone around you, and they'll actually they can be good support for it. At the very least, they'll just make fun of you, and who cares, right? So
cheating goals when you make them, when you verbalize them.
It's crazy, isn't it? And then if they ever see me like eating outside of that time restriction, I'm like, look, this is my one day of the week and I don't care. I don't feel like doing time restricted eating. So you don't have to be crazy about it. Remember, it's not about willpower. It's just about having a plan. So, all right, cool. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you guys next week on the webinar.
Thanks, Regan.
You got it. Take care, everybody.